Tossing Grenades at Windmills podcast.
That didn't bother me as much when that dump happened. It was actually kind of a relief. And then I dated other guys who were messed up and didn't work out so well. And then that next summer I met your father, the summer after my sophomore year in college. Yeah, but it was, I had a good core of friends at Lynchburg. One of my friends from high school, from the theater department, Anita Ferrone, went there. We didn't know were both going there. We found out, the first week of my freshman year that we were like, oh, hi! But I had a good core of friends there that are still, Barbara Lagatella Evans, who's one of my Facebook friends, and Barbara Waddy Carlton was my roommate. We're friends on Facebook. Some of our other friends from high school and college were kind of weird. One of them is a right-wing Trump-supporting freak from high school who is married to the guy who was the most brilliant guy in our high school class of 68. They're married. And I don't know if he agrees with her politics or not. I never saw any political posts from him, but she freaked me out by being a right-wing Christian Trump supporter. She was never the brightest bulb in the marquee. So I guess it shouldn't have been a surprise, but it always is when you find out somebody that you like and know is like that. It's like, oh, really? Okay. How did I not know you had that kind of leaning within you all of those years ago? But yeah, he was the one, David Hall, he was the one who, we were in Miss Corbin's chemistry class, and we're all sitting there, and he always sat front and center. And she was doing something where, Miss Corbin was brilliant. I really liked her. Again, I got D's in chemistry in high school. And she tried really hard to bring me in for special counseling and stuff and help me. But I was always going to not be good at chemistry. I should have been good at chemistry because I was good with algebra. I got A's in algebra, and I had an excellent memory. And chemistry is basically algebra and memory. So, memorization. So I should have excelled at chemistry, but I didn't because of issues with my dad. So I had a mental block there. Anyway, we're sitting in class, and she was doing something. I don't remember what she had, but she was picking up something with a pair of tongs and about to drop it into a big beaker. And David just screamed, "Miss Corbin!" And she looked at it and said, "Oh, that's too big. I could have blown us all up." Ha 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 ha! And the rest of us were sitting there completely clueless, just watching her. She was the kind of person who would be talking about one formula. She was ambidextrous, and she could write one formula with one hand and another formula with the other. So she'd be up there, and it's like, no wonder I was confused in the class. David was the only one who could follow her. And he was brilliant. But why he ended up with this other person who is a Trump supporter, I don't know. That seems beyond me. But anyway, Jim Shand was, he was a monster. So the summer after my sophomore year, I was pretty broken. I was sick from mono when I came. I took my exams in the infirmary and went back to church. I was pretty much a broken spirit at that point. I was in really bad shape, very, very badly depressed, and I had severe hormonal problems. I always had, I would get violently ill whenever I had my period. Horrible, horrible cramps, and I would have to go to the infirmary and just sleep. The nurse would just let me sleep for a couple of hours. It's the only time my skin ever broke out. I was not one of these kids who had lots of pimples and stuff. I always, my period was very erratic. I wouldn't know when it was coming until my face would break out. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's coming. All right, got it. Um, I actually fainted. Uh, there was one night in college. I don't remember what time of year it was. My roommate, Barbara Waddy. Um, I got it in the middle of the night and woke up. A lot of times I would vomit with it. And so I woke up and was getting sick. I collapsed on the floor and was getting sick. And she shoved a box under my face to catch the vomit so it wouldn't get everywhere. And then I tried to stagger down the hall to the communal bathroom so I could vomit in the toilet, but I didn't make it. I passed out. And one of the students in the hall saw me. I passed out and woke up in her lap. She had my head in her lap. And several of the students had heard the commotion and came running down to check on me. And they got me to the infirmary, and I spent the night in the infirmary. And the next day, my history teacher was like, yeah, sure. And I said, no, seriously, and I had a note from the infirmary, seriously. I told him, I was honest with him. I said, I passed out. I got my period and passed out and was vomiting and everything. And so, yeah, I think a lot of my depression at that time was keyed to my hormonal problems. I had a doctor when I was pregnant with Randy, tell me that I was allergic to my own hormones, is what the way he put it. I don't think that's technically what it was, but I obviously had problems with my biochemistry then. And that's, we'll get into all of that later. But
Well, I mean, given that apparently I didn't even know that there was a history of autoimmune disorders in your side of the family, that makes total sense.
yeah. So anyway, that summer I worked on, and I hated the road shows, the Mormon road shows. I thought they were so cheesy and, and just crappy theater. Later on, when after your dad and I were married, and I was put in charge of directing a few, I kind of started to enjoy them and understand why they were being done and not be so pompous about it. But at that time, I was very pompous about it. Anyway, so there was the road show, and Aunt Marie was, yeah, Aunt Marie. I was actually in a show that Aunt Marie directed. She directed a version of Snoopy where I played the Charlie Brown thing, where I played Lucy. It wasn't the stage show. It was one they had written, I guess, that she directed.
Now,
And
just to clarify, because this is something I've never asked before, because of the order you presented them, I'm a little bit unclear. Did you date non-Mormon guys after you joined the Mormon Church?
oh yeah, yeah. I joined. The thing is, I was active during the summers when I was home, but then once I got to Lynchburg, there was a tiny little ward there that held, it wasn't a ward, it was a branch that held their meetings in a mortuary. There was one day where they canceled church because there were too many bodies at the mortuary. So there was no room for us to meet. So I gave up. I gave up because I had to go. There was one other Mormon kid on campus, and there was a family that would pick the two of us up and take us out there, and it was a long drive, and it was just weird. And so, during the year I would fall away, and then I'd become active again when the next summer. So, so I joined the summer before my freshman year in college. Was inactive. Well, I was active for a little while, and there was a girl on my first dormitory. That's one thing I didn't mention. There was a big brouhaha with the first dorm I was in. The girls in that dorm hated me, probably because I was dating like crazy, and I was always off to rehearsal or something. And they had no lives, so all they would do is sit around and talk about whoever was not there, and I was never there, so they'd talk about me. I remember the woman who was the I forget what they call them, the dorm or the floor.
RA, I think they call them sometimes.
Yeah. And she kind of was in with these other girls on my floor in the dormitory. I mean, she was a crazy person, and she gave me all kinds of crap because I laughed. Stop laughing! That's nervous laughter! Stop laughing! She gave me a hard time for laughing all the time. Anyway, there was one time I came back from rehearsal, and my roommates and everybody treated me like crap. And my roommate and I got into always were getting into fights. She hated me. And so anyway, one day I came back from rehearsal and I came up the steps and I hear they're all meeting in the RA's room. Everybody in the floor is in the RA's room, and I hear them talking about me and making fun of me. I have to go to rehearsal and blah, 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 blah. And they're all talking about me in this meeting. And they saw me. I stopped like a deer in the headlights at the top of the stairs, shocked and hearing them talking about me. And they slammed the door. They saw me at the top of the stairs and slammed the door. I was just floored. And I'm not a person who deals well with this stuff, especially then.
Well, no, nobody would. Nobody would deal well with that kind of a thing. I mean, I suppose I would,
really
but
hurt.
yeah, no, I can imagine it would.
Anyway, so after that, my roommate and I got in a horrific fight. And I went down to the, whatever she is, and the dean of women. I don't remember what in the hell she was. Anyway, I went down to her and told her I wanted to transfer to another dorm. I didn't want to be with my roommate anymore. I'm a person who gets along with most people, really. I'm an easy roommate for the most part, which is ironic with everything going on with the family. Because I'm an easy roommate. I'm very easygoing. I'm very forgiving, etc., etc. And, the women that I had stayed with, the summer before I started college, and I got along great. Because I don't make waves, I don't eat other people's food, I'm I'm really not used to people, so I don't tend to cause problems. I tend to mouse into the background. And so anyway, she put me in with Barbara Waddy. I didn't realize that she was doing that on purpose because Barbara told me later that she wanted a room by herself. She wanted a private room. She didn't want a roommate. And she and I got along great. We became best friends. And but she said when I first came in, she found out I was a Mormon and freaked out and, a few other things. But we get along really well. And she told me that the counselor, whatever she was, put me in there because she said that this woman kept sending her roommates and she kept rejecting them. And she finally decided that I was the least offensive one she'd met. So she decided to give me a try. And we got along really, really, really well. She was the one that was at night. She'd ask me questions and then, I'd be talking and then I'd hear her snoring. And then one day she said, started asking me questions. I'm not going to answer your questions because you fall asleep while I'm answering. She said, but your voice is so soothing. I can't sleep. We just got along so well. Anyway, I know it was funny. I thought it was funny when she told me that. So it's one of my favorite stories from college. Anyway, we hit it off really, really well. She freaked out when she found out I was Mormon because she thought I was going to be praying, getting up every morning and praying to the east or something. But, and at that time I was still active, I guess, but not long after that I wasn't. Anyway, where was I on all of this? Oh, talking about that horrible experience with my first roommate. Yeah. So yeah, that happened. And I ended up in the other dorm. And this, Barbara Lagatella Evans lived across the hall. They gave me the first birthday party I'd ever had in my life. I was always overreacting to things on purpose to be funny. I mean, they'd be talking about sex or something. Barbara Lagatella came into the room one time and was reading from Portnoy's Complaint, which is basically pornographic. And she was reading some of the more graphic scenes from that. You know, smut, and I'd say things like that. And, so it was all a big running joke. Anyway, I came home from rehearsal one day, and they had draped toilet paper all over the room and banners saying "Happy Birthday, Jody." And I had bought a sponge cake and written smut on it. And I just started laughing and crying. I said, "This is the first birthday party I've ever had." And they were like, "Oh my God, we would have given you a better party if we'd known." I was like, "No, this is awesome. This is great." Not awesome back then, but, this is great. This is so great. I'm so happy, First birthday party I'd ever had in my life. But we all became really good friends. And we even, the guys were always commenting, "Didn't so-and-so wear that, yesterday?" Because we were always trading clothes. And they were all much shorter than me, by about 3 or 4 inches, but we all wore the same size. So, we were always trading clothes. That was pretty funny. I'm sure that's not that exciting to anybody but me, but you're pretty close, you're pretty good friends when you all exchange clothing. Our closets were pretty much open to each other. It was pretty awesome.
This has been the Tossing Grenades at Windmills podcast. Buy my book, Have Name Will Travel, available in many markets, including at Amazon.com. Copyright 2018, Red Anvil Amalgamated, LLC.
To fight the forces of evil!